The Leadership Conference is proud to recognize tonight's recipients of the 38th Annual Hubert H. Humphrey Civil and Human Rights Award for selfless and devoted service in the cause of equality. Senator Tom Harkin, a beacon of light in the struggle for equality and equal opportunity. Randy Weingarten, a fiery advocate for educators, communities, and future generations. And Eliseo Medina, a soldier for justice, willing to sacrifice health and freedom to bring attention to one of America's greatest moral crises, immigration reform.
HB 56 in Alabama is the worst, but not the only law targeting immigrant workers.
We, the labor movement, were founded by immigrants. And we have to stand with immigrants today because there's no way we can make life better for all workers unless every worker has the same rights, same responsibilities, and can unite together to fight for our common needs and our common goals. I've been dealing with this broken immigration system from even before I was born. My father came to this country as a bracero, a guest worker, and when that program ended, he came here as an undocumented worker. We went to a little town in California called Delano, where we were farm workers. And for the first time, I finally understood what my father went through in this country. I didn't know there was anything we could do until I met Cesar Chavez. And through him, I understood that even though we may be poor, but we have a right to expect dignity and respect. And I joined the farm workers movement. I went home the next day, I cracked open my piggy bank and I went and joined the union. I was 19 years old. I started working as an organizer. I worked in elections and just meant going out and having conversations with people. And then after that, I got asked to go to Chicago and stop the sale of grapes. I got to learn from the best, and I got to learn by doing. Back in November of 2013, a number of us became really concerned that the issue of immigration reform was getting bogged down in politics. So we decided, 7 of us, to begin a fast. We wanted to sacrifice in solidarity with the immigrants who are suffering death and separation from families, and 5 million of their children who live in fear every day that their parents are going to be arrested and deported.
Fast for Families, we began our tour in Los Angeles, California. We will visit over 100 congressional districts with a very simple message. The time for reform of our immigration laws is long past.
Whether you're fighting for civil rights, whether you're fighting for labor rights or for immigrant rights, it's all one struggle. That was the case when I was with the Farm Workers Union. That was the case when I was working for janitors. That was the case when I was working with home care workers. The American people are very generous people. They believe in doing the right thing. Eventually, the American people make the right decision. And when we're united, nothing is impossible.
Public education is the backbone of society. But for it to be the backbone of a democracy and the backbone for equal opportunity, it has to be a civil right. That's the way you recreate the vision of the American dream, which is a ladder of opportunity for all. In public education, you've seen this unholy alliance between the austerity hawks and the privatizers. It goes something like this: starve the schools, criticize them for their failure to be able to do what you've asked them to do, all the while peddling private alternatives, demonizing teachers, and marginalizing those who are their voice. And that is exactly what happened in Philadelphia.
The fear is that school won't start on time if this money doesn't come. So this morning, demonstrators are staging a protest outside of district headquarters.
The governor got $45 million from the federal government and held that money hostage until one day.
12-year-old LaPortia Massey, a student at Bryant Elementary School in Cobbs Creek, died September 25th, apparently from complications from asthma. The Bryant nurse is there Thursdays and Fridays, but LaPortia became ill on a Wednesday.
The civil rights communities, the parent communities, our union, others, all banded together. And it was the work together that essentially morally forced the governor to disgorge that money to the Philadelphia public schools. When I was in 11th grade, my mom was on strike for 6 or 7 weeks. Her superintendent decided his rule was going to be the rule of law. 297 of the 300 teachers in Nyack went on strike. And I think that you just get a sense nobody's going to give us anything that we don't collectively try to get for ourselves. And the way in which we try to do it, as the AFT now, is that we join with communities around a shared agenda. That's about solving problems, not winning arguments. When I became the national president, my mother was with me, and I just saw in her eyes a sense of job well done. Teaching high school was frankly my favorite job. When you connect with kids in that kind of way, where you're really engaging and trying to help them find themselves, that's when you see kids taking their place in the world and taking your place as the next generation.
Congressman John Lewis was the youngest speaker, and now 50 years later, I am the youngest speaker.
I grew up with a brother who became deaf when he was about 5 years old, had spinal meningitis. I saw how he was discriminated against in terms of employment, in terms of what people thought he could do and how he should live his life. And I just thought it was grossly unfair. A lot of people don't get it. Even to today, they don't understand that the Americans with Disabilities Act is a civil rights bill. So what the ADA did is it brought people with disabilities under that broad umbrella of civil rights in America. I'm very proud of it. Yeah, it's got my name on it, but so many people were involved in it.
I just wanted to say to my brother Frank that today we say no to fear, that we say no to ignorance, and that we say no to prejudice.
The changes that have come about, every building built in America today is fully accessible. Every bus is accessible. Sports arenas, movie theaters. You can't be discriminated in education. You see people with disabilities working in jobs, having access and support systems. I mean, there's a long way to go yet, but from 1990 to now, 24 years later, it's amazing. The face of America's changed. I come from a small town. We were really poor. And so we were always imbued with the sense that, you know, you got to fight for economic fairness and justice. And I think then as I grew older, as I went to college, that's really when I really started sensing that there was a close connection between economic injustice and civil rights.
President Obama's nominee to lead the Civil Rights Division at the Justice Department was blocked today. Debo Adegbile fell well short in a Senate test vote, with 7 Democrats joining Republicans in opposition.
The vote on Debo Adegbile sent a strong message. If you're a young black person and you work for the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and you're asked to sign an appeal, the message said today is don't do it. He fulfilled his obligations as a lawyer, and because he did that, he can't take a position in the Justice Department. This is one of the most shameful days in the history of the United States Senate. I just, from the earliest time, I've had this sense of there were injustices that were visited on people that were just unfair. In my family, we were always taught that, you know, about social justice and economic justice. First thing I ever did in Congress was a human rights amendment, and I worked with Hubert Humphrey to get it passed. So to have an award, first of all, given by the Leadership Conference, and secondly, named after Hubert Humphrey, for me, it's a great honor.